Good morning, bom dia, buenos dias, everyone, and welcome to another event hosted by the Science Panel for the Amazon, today on Sustainable Development Pathways Towards a Living Amazon. My name is Isabella Leite, and I will be your moderator today. We are gathered here to present an overview of the state of the Amazon and potential sustainable development pathways aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. The speakers will make the case for a living Amazon, which is the vision promoted by the Science Panel for the Amazon, and discuss countries' performances and trends in achieving the SDGs in the Amazon. The discussion will be based on the upcoming report of the Science Panel for the Amazon. And for those who don't know, the SPA, which is how we call the Science Panel for the Amazon, is an initiative that aims to provide scientific evidence for policy action to conserve the Amazon. And it's currently formed by approximately 200 scientists, mostly from the Amazonian countries, but also from also global partners. And I'm happy to present 4 of them here today. So first of all, we have Dr. Germán Poveda, who is a member of the SPA Science Steering Committee, of the IPCC, of the Colombian Academy of Exact Physical and Natural Sciences, and of the Spain's Royal Academy of Exact Physical and Natural Sciences. He is also a professor at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia. Dr. Alencar will follow Germán, and she is lead author of the chapter on the SPA's vision towards a living Amazon. Anne is a science director at IPAM, the Amazon's Environmental Research Institute. And for the past 26 years, she has been working and coordinating a research team dedicated to understand the dynamics of fire, forest degradation, the relationship with land use and climate and conservation in the Amazon and in the Cerrado. After Annie, we'll have Dr. Lilian Painter, who is also a lead author in the Vision chapter and on the SDG chapter. And she's the country director for the Wildlife Conservation Society in Bolivia, with a big focus on territorial management through bottom-up land use planning processes. And last but not least, we'll have Dr. Atossa Soltani, who is also one of the authors of the SPA's Vision chapter, and she's founder and board president of the Amazon Watch, and she served as the organization's first executive director for 18 years. And currently, Atossa is the director of the global strategy of the Amazon Sacred Headwaters initiatives. Each speaker will have around 5-6 minutes, and then we'll be taking questions for each one of them. So please send your questions on the Q&A button. And with that, over to you, Dr. Poveda.
Thank you, Isabella. I want to thank you for inviting me to present these ideas on the hydroclimatic impacts of Amazonian deforestation over South America. So next slide, please. So the problem is illustrated in this video. Can you please click on the video? Which is showing the areas that have been deforested in the Amazon River Basin in the last 20 years, denoted in purple color. Notice that almost 20% of Amazonia has been deforested so far. Where it's surpassing the 25%, the so-called tipping point, the entire rainforest could collapse and become a warmer and drier region like a savanna. So many things are at stake with the deforestation of tropical South America, and in particular of the Amazon River Basin. Next, please. Deforestation causes a lot of hydroclimatological, ecological, and biogeochemical problems. For instance, in addition to being one of the causes of the COVID-19 pandemic, being a zoonosis transmitted from bats to humans because of deforestation in Southeast Asia and China. In addition to that, deforestation causes a disruption of the hydrologic cycle, causes desertification, soil loss, and erosion. It causes the loss of ecosystem services. Of course, deforestation amplifies hydrometeorological extremes like floods and droughts. Also, deforestation increases air temperatures, contributing to global warming, not only because of the shadow effect, but also because of the losing of the evapotranspirative cooling of the forest. Of course, deforestation destroys biodiversity, threatening the bioeconomy, which is the economic hub for the region. And of course, deforestation is caused by an economic distortion. Next, please. Here in this slide, we can see how air temperature is increasing in Amazonia during the period from 1949 to 2017, with respect to the average between 1961 and 1990, according to various data sources. As you can see, temperature has been increasing steadily, with internal variability also associated with the El Niño occurrence, which are denoted with the red arrows. So temperature has been increasing as a result of deforestation. Next slide, please. Also, the duration of the dry season has been increasing in red, and also the duration of the dry season end in blue. In the top panel is showing that deforestation especially in southeastern Brazil, is increasing the duration of the dry season, and also in the bottom panel we can see how precipitation is decreasing. So deforestation is causing these two problems to the hydroclimate of the entire South American continent. Next, please. Here we can see that the dry season is getting longer. In the x-axis, you can see the months of the year, and in the y-axis, you can see the years. And as you can see, in recent years, this length of the dry season has been increased, associated with deforestation. Next, please. In this video, I'm going to show you the production and transport of water vapor over South America. This video has been made using the results of a sophisticated climatic model that represents the diurnal cycle of evapotranspiration over the Amazon rainforest. Let's wait to see the video, and perhaps you can notice here I'm showing you the diurnal cycle of the evapotranspiration. I'm going to show you, this video is showing a time span from December 2004 to March 2005. And you can see in colors, in purple colors is less concentration of water vapor, and in green and white is larger concentration of water vapor. As you can see, humidity enters by the Atlantic Oceans to the tropical rainforest of the Amazon. Then the evapotranspiration of the forest, you can see the heartbeat effect, showing the role of evapotranspiration during photosynthesis during the day, but not so during the night. So the heartbeat effect is associated with evapotranspiration. So here you can see how important this evapotranspiration is to produce and transport tremendous amount of moisture and water vapor all the way from the Amazon rainforest to the Andes, and also to regions in southeastern South America, affecting cities like Sao Paulo and the La Plata River Basin cities. So in this video, you can see how important the Amazon transpiration in the rainforest is important for the production and transport of water vapor that feeds the glaciers in the Andes, but also cities in southeastern South America. So this video shows us the importance of the rainforest for the stability of the hydroclimatological cycle in South America. Next slide, please. And it happens, as we can see in this video, because of the transport of the so-called or the transfer of moisture by the so-called aerial rivers throughout South America. You can see water entering from the Atlantic Ocean, and then recycling over the Amazon rainforest, transported until up to the Andes mountains, and then to the southeast to the La Plata River Basin. So here we are seeing the streamlines of these atmospheric rivers over South America. Next, please. Why is this phenomenon is so important in the tropical rainforest? Because in the Amazon and in the phenomenon called the precipitation recycling, which is that fraction of precipitation which is falling on a river basin, which has its origin in evapotranspiration from the rainforest itself. So in the Amazon River basin, this precipitation feedback or precipitation recycle is between 35 and 50% of the Amazon rainfall. So if we cut this process by cutting the forest, of course, the precipitation is going to decrease in the Amazon River basin, as we can see in the previous slides. Next, please. These two diagrams show very clearly this effect. What I'm showing here is for two different seasons of the year, June to September on the left and December to March on the right. And the colors denotes the fraction of precipitation which has its origin in local evapotranspiration. So as you can see in the color bar, yellow means 0.5, which means that in those pixels with yellow color, 50% of the precipitation comes from local evapotranspiration. And as you can see, even in this is much higher. In the Andes, you can see colors green to blue, which means 70 to 90% of precipitation comes from local evapotranspiration. So this precipitation recycling is very important all over South America, especially in tropical South America, to maintain the integrity of the hydrological cycle. Next, please. Also, deforestation destroys the cascade of moisture downwinds. In this slide, what I'm showing is the dynamics of the moisture circulation cascade in Amazonia through soil vegetation. For instance, in the top panel, we can see something like the vegetation atmosphere system is in equilibrium. In the middle panel, we can see that the effects of deforestation and reduce inflow from the Atlantic Ocean reduces local evapotranspiration and moisture transfer by the winds. And in the bottom panel, we can see that as a result of deforestation, the rainfall regime is changed elsewhere in tropical South America, causing further forest loss and reduced moisture transport. Next, please. And one major problem is that there is a tremendous feedback processes between the Andes and the low-lying Amazon. And deforestation can alter the transport of moisture from the low-lying Amazon to the Andes, affecting the glaciers and the tropical Andes, causing or threatening the supply of water for cities like Bogota, Quito, La Paz, and Lima, and cities in southeastern South America, as we mentioned before. But also because the Andes produce a lot of surface water that transport water, sediments, and nutrients to the low-lying Amazon. So the deforestations on both ends can destroy the interaction between the Andes and the low-lying Amazon, so affecting the whole hydrologic cycle of the continent. Next slide, please. And also deforestations and the fires that comes with it affect air quality all over South America, as we can see here in the fires of 2019, that obscure cities like Sao Paulo at 2 p.m. became like night hours due to the smoke and the black carbon and the soot associated with the fires. But also these fires affected the melting of the tropical glaciers, because this black carbon and soot deposits on the high mountains, contributing to melting and the shrinking of the tropical glaciers in the Andes. So not only air quality is affected, but also water quality and water availability in the Andes is threatened by the deforestation in the Amazon. So Poveda, next, please.
Sorry, you have 2 more minutes.
I think this is my last slide. Yeah, see, here we are seeing this video showing the transport of carbon monoxide associated with the fires during 2019 in the Amazon. went all the way through the Andes and the Pacific Ocean, but also to southeastern South America, affecting cities like Sao Paulo, as we can see here on the left-hand side. So many impacts from deforestation on the hydroclimatology and the ecology of the continents, with many impacts associated with agriculture, because agriculture, of course, needs water. Many impacts associated with the disruption of the hydrological cycle associated with floods and droughts, but also with the functioning of the hydroclimatological cycle over South America. So, and also deforestation increases air temperatures, as we saw earlier. And this is very much associated with the vector-borne diseases like malaria, like dengue, like chikungunya, like Zika. So deforestation, as I like to say, I am not my crusade for the forest is not a hydrological one, but a hydrological one. So I'll be happy to answer your questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Germán, for presenting to us the importance of the Amazon for the stability of the hydroclimatological cycle and of the current disruptions in the region. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Alencar to the floor, please.
Thank you, Isabella. For me, it's a pleasure to be here presenting what we got from this a year of discussion about the future of the Amazon we want, what is we are calling the living Amazon. And to present that, I think it's very important to give present some elements that are very important to take us to the living Amazon. So the first one is important to understand the Amazon trajectories and worldviews that help to shape the historical path of the Amazon and shape the Amazon as we know it today, and also how the Amazon social actors, and they are not only the people that live in the Amazon, but also interact with the Amazon and governs the Amazon, and how the global interconnections, they interact with the history and the trajectories and also the social actors' behavior. And it can go ahead. And these have been taken principles and values, and those principles and values are guiding the human nature interactions and feedbacks. So what we have today, what we are calling the Amazon at the edge, is that those principles and values, they are distorted in one way. Because they are based on an Amazon that is dominated by unsustainable, extractive, and extensive-based economies, with weak policies and implementing institutions, and weak governance and public participation on decision-making. And this generates human and nature interactions that cause inequalities, violate rights, generate conflicts, illegal activities, habitat loss, degradation, pollution, unsustainable production system, a disincentive to better production system, and more impacts climate change. So what we want for the living Amazon, and you can go ahead, is to actually have principles and values that take the Amazon to another path, to the path of living planet in a way that goes beyond even the living Amazon, where there's a dominance of sustainable bioeconomy, where conservation and restoration are broadly supported. The Amazon people have their rights and participate in decision making. We have a strong governance towards sustainability, and we expect that this generates outcomes of human nature interactions that create diversified and support diversified sustainable circular economies that indigenous peoples and local communities have their rights guaranteed, and then we'll keep like conserving a lot of the Amazon and their way of life. We will reduce deforestation, get to zero deforestation, degradation and pollution, improve well-being, ecosystem services, and will help to mitigate climate change and adaptation. This feeds back on the living Amazon. So this is what we are going to talk about in very briefly. You can go ahead, please. So talking about the worldviews, I think it's very important to understand the past trajectories of the Amazon. So from the imperial period, when European dominated over the Americas, the Amazon was seen as to exploit and to conquer, and it was a wild and empty place that men can go there and transform the nature. And we go close to the Industrial Revolution, where we can improve nature, and there was this all technocentrism that started to develop. The rise of industrial needs, like rubber, like transforming rubber, minerals, and things like that. And then after the post-World War II, we have this, I mean, the Amazon is, let's occupy the Amazon, and then there was all this national integration process of going to the Amazon and occupy it. And there was a feedback to that movement, which was like the preservationism of the Amazon. The Amazon needs to be preserved, and no, any people can be there. And then that moved us forward from these antagonistic views to a more globalized Amazon, which I'm calling re-globalization of the Amazon, with these agro-commodities, a period of extensive degradation happening in the region, and there was a feedback movement for that, which was the rise of indigenous movements and the strength of these indigenous movements and things like the Buen Vivir and the highlight of the peoples as guardians of kinships, and this is where we are now. So how to go from there and build a future for the living Amazon, where we understand that the Amazon is part of a system, as Dr. Poveda just showed very literally, and also we acknowledge the knowledge of indigenous peoples and local communities on this process. So, and this is what we are going to see further. You can go ahead. So to think about the Amazon is very important to think about these historical trajectories, because this permeates the diverse views of people and the social actors that interact in the Amazon, like the residents, the external actors, like the private companies, investors, and the organizations that govern the Amazon. So we have different people acting, interacting with the Amazon and thinking about different elements. So we need to kind of have a rule that can be followed by everyone. And then we came to that through the principles and values. You can go ahead, please. And so let's to kind of try to have this integration on what we want for the Amazon it's very important to see the values that we want to take this forward. So the Amazon is the largest tropical forest and the largest river in the world, and has a unique biodiversity and geodiversity, and this needs to be valued. The Amazon is key to cross-scale regulatory ecosystem function, and that's very important for water security, food security, income security. The Amazon peoples, they interact with they know how to interact with the nature, and they have whole diverse and interconnected livelihood strategies that can be seen as a how can I say, inspiration for the future world bioeconomy. The Amazon holds diverse worldviews, as we saw, values, institutions, and governance systems, and we can know and learn from that, and that this plurality is very important. The Amazon also holds high levels of cultural and linguistic diversity and a lot of knowledge. I mean, we're very rich in knowledge and how to use the natural systems. And also, when we give the rights or recognize the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities, for example, we can have a peace in a way, reduce conflicts, promote equity, and increase well-being in the forest and river areas of the Amazon. You can go ahead, please. So those are the values of the Amazon. The principles, I mean, they are related to the values. Yeah, the biodiversity of the Amazon needs to be valued, respected, and protected. The functions and the ecosystem functions that the Amazon provides at the multiple scales needs to be valued as well and respected and protected. The use of the Amazon, the land use that happens in the Amazon, and the use of the natural resources in the Amazon must support ecological process and not degrade ecological processes, avoiding us to reach, for example, a potential tipping point. The urban and rural area, so as a principle, need to be integrated in a productive system. The Amazonian governance must include participatory processes. The biocultural diversity needs to be valued, recognized, and protected. And the recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities is very important to paramount and promote well-being for everyone. Can you go ahead, please? So based on that, we aggregated these, how can I say, these principles and values and suggestions on how to reach, and paths on how to reach the living Amazon in three main elements, which are conservation, restoration, and remediation, circular and sustainable bioeconomy, and people's empowerment and governance. And those three, they kind of mirror the sustainable development tripod. And you can go ahead, please.
I need, you have 1 more minute.
Okay, so maybe we'll go to the last one. So what is the solution tree to reach the living Amazon? I think there are many elements that need to be solved and many paths to be taken, but on conservation and restoration remediation, we think it's fundamental to have societal participation and engagement, policy and legal enforcement. It's needed, strong and transparent and monitoring systems, market-based incentive on restoration, payment for environmental services, effective and protected areas conservation policies. In terms of participation and empowerment, like cross-scale alignment of for governance, strong and articulated institutions need to be in place, improve access to information, inclusive decision-making process, equity, justice, and rights policies in place, and cross-sectorial articulation. In terms of circular bioeconomy, I think it's very important to value a diversified economy, to value incentive, diversified economy, to invest in socially responsible markets. Science and technology need to be in place, and investment in innovation, corporate responsibility and accountability, response, consumption and behavior, and green infrastructure and sustainable energies. All of that need to have institutional adaptive capacity, educational capacity building, and entrepreneurship, and transparency and accountability. Those are for us to reach the living Amazon, and that we'll have all these leaves there in the figure, which some of them green urban economies, market equity, restoration and conservation, healthy environment, and so on. So what we hope for the living Amazon is to, in fact, build these paths to have economic prosperity, social justice, and natural environmental health. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for presenting the values and principles of the living Amazon. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Lilian Painter to the floor.
Hi, thank you, Isabella. So I'm going to present the work that we've been developing together with Annie, but also with other contributing authors listed there. Next, please. So in the Sustainable Development Goal framework, the 17 goals can be clustered into 5 dimensions, each dimension beginning with the letter P. So people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships. And the Living Amazon vision that Annie has been describing is an urgent alternative to the current trends in the Amazon that places all these 5 dimensions within the ecological limits of the Amazon basin to sustain, to be able to sustain environmental impacts. Next, please. So beginning with the people dimension that includes no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, and gender equality, using information from the Center for Sustainable, for the Objectives of Sustainable Development for Latin America. We can see that on the right is the performance of the different countries in the Amazon in relation to the average progress worldwide, and on the left is the trend of the different countries in the Amazon. And according to the information that CODS gathered in 2019, we can see that there is, even before the COVID pandemic, there was already a moderate to significant lag in performance on the right of all the countries in the region in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals indicators under the people dimension in comparison to global averages. And additionally, in almost all cases, Amazonian countries were also not advancing at the appropriate rate or trend required to achieve these goals by 2030. The pandemic has exacerbated this problem and is setting back advances in reducing poverty by 12 years and extreme poverty prevalence by 20 years. And in terms of health, despite the fact that the population of the Amazon is relatively young, it is found within the overall region of Latin America, which is the second highest, which has shown the second highest cumulative death rate as a result of COVID-19 in the world. And this is a result of weak public health systems, limits in social safety nets, and high levels of inequality. And this is particularly visible in the case of the Amazon. For example, cases and deaths among indigenous people in Brazil due to COVID were 136% higher than the national average in the case of cases, and 110% higher in the case of deaths, not including the fact that both cases and deaths of indigenous people are probably highly underreported because of isolation. Regarding gender equality, women have been at the front line of the response during the pandemic in the Amazon, and represent 70% of health sector staff of Amazon countries. During the pandemic, women have also faced greater domestic responsibilities and also increased domestic violence. This has also affected adolescent fertility rates that are expected to be set back and affect, in particular, the most vulnerable girls due to difficulties on access to birth control, increased unwanted pregnancies, due to abuse and sexual violence, and the suspension of sexual education programs. Next, please. In the planet dimension that includes clean water and sanitation, responsible production and consumption, climate action, and life on land, we can notice that performance in general on the right has been lower than global average, but we have some advance in green in terms of trend. At the national level, Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador are following a trend that would allow them to ensure adequate access to water and sanitation for their population by 2030. However, this trend is not reflected in the Amazon region. So this trend is a reflection of advances in more, in the more densely populated areas and not the Amazonian region. So, for example, in the Brazilian Amazon in 2018, only 54% of the population had access to water supply, and only 15% had sewage. And this is paradoxical in the largest watershed in the world, but nevertheless, in 2018, out of 8.5 million people in Latin America that lacked access to potable water supply, the majority are found in Amazonian countries: Brazil, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. In fact, in 2020, 89% of the people living in the Peruvian Amazon had no access to drinking water, and 38% of households in the state of Amazonas in Brazil had no household connections to running water in 2018. The majority of the municipalities in the Amazon Delta and estuary have less than 20% of households with sewage coverage. Next, please. Regarding the climate change sustainable development goal, this is an opportunity because of the importance of the Amazon forest as a nature-based solution to climate change. And all countries in the Amazon are signatories of the Paris Agreement and are implementing policies to combat climate change under the UNFCCC. All of them have submitted their intended nationally determined contributions and nationally determined contributions. And Brazil, Colombia, Peru, and Suriname updated their NDCs in 2020. Mitigation targets are included in many of the commitments, but not by Bolivia, Guyana, and Suriname. And all communications except for the Brazilian communication include commitments to increase adaptation capacity. Half of the countries have included specific policy frameworks to enhance the NDCs, and a potential alignment with the 2030 development agenda is mentioned in particular in the case of Colombia, and to a lesser degree by Venezuela, Suriname, Guyana, and Bolivia. So this represents a very important opportunity for the future. Next, please. In terms of prosperity, since again looking at the we can't go into every single one, but looking at the green countries in the trend column, since 1990s, there's been an important noteworthy progress in improving access to electricity, both in the urban and rural areas of Latin America. Remembering that prosperity includes SDGs for affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, and sustainable cities and communities. So current trends show that most countries are moving towards achieving the target of access to electricity, both in urban and rural areas. But there are still moderate to significant lags in comparison to global averages in access to energy, to clean energy in all the countries in the region. And it's important to highlight that this indicator does not include an analysis of the trade-offs between hydroelectric project generation in lowland Amazonia and emissions that occur because of hydroelectric projects from forest loss to flooding, or the impacts of hydroelectric projects on ecosystems and aquatic connectivity and local fisheries. Next, please.
Lilian, please, you have 1 more minute.
Okay, I'm finishing. So in terms of peace, all the countries have significant or critical lags in this indicator and related to safety, perception of corruption, and rule of law. But it's particularly important to consider the increasing importance of illegal activities such as gold mining and drug, human and wildlife trafficking, especially in the border areas, and lack of respect for indigenous rights, which continues to be an obstacle to peace in the region. And in terms of partnerships, I'd just like to highlight that although there is increasing global recognition of the importance of the Amazon, leading to increased international support to the region, this is not on a par with the investments focusing on sustainable infrastructure and energy drivers behind deforestation. So next, please. Next, please. In terms of key messages, despite some isolated policies aimed at supporting more sustainable pathways post-2015, all the countries have largely continued to implement development models that increase social inequalities. And a resilient living Amazon vision means placing the people, prosperity, peace, and partnership dimensions within the limits of the Amazonian basin and is incompatible with the current extractive development practices. Trade-offs amongst the different sustainable development goals have to be reduced, and safeguarding the rights of nature and indigenous peoples and local communities is essential to achieve the 2030 agenda. The COVID-19 pandemic should be a wake-up call regarding the impact, the irreversible impact that we're having on nature, and achieving the sustainable development goals is more urgent than ever under a Living Amazon vision. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lilian, for presenting to us the trends and performance of the SDGs in the Amazon. I'd like to invite now Dr. Atossa Soltani, please.
Thank you so much, Isabella, for inviting me and my fellow panelists. We've been working together for the last year, and it's been incredibly enriching process. I come to you as an activist who's been working in the Amazon rainforest for nearly 30 years. And I want to really focus on highlighting some of what was already mentioned and getting a little bit deeper into the Living Amazon vision. Ultimately, for avoiding the tipping point of ecological unraveling in the Amazon's hydroclimatic system, we need to come together and foster a new ethic and realization that in order to avoid the tipping point of ecological collapse of the hydrological system, we need to commit to the protection, the permanent protection and restoration of at least 80% of the Amazon biome as a whole. The Living Amazon vision also recognizes that the Amazon is more than the individual parts of the 9 countries where it's found. It is actually a living system and part of a living earth, and that as a biome, its well-being is the integrity, the ecological well-being of the Amazon depends on the cooperation and action all the way from the headwaters in the Andes region down to the mouth of the Amazon, that activities in one part of the Amazon are affecting the hydrological system over our other parts of the Amazon. We call the Living Amazon vision a moonshot goal, an ambitious vision that would maybe seem impossible today, but actually needs to happen and needs to happen very quickly. The moonshot referring to when President Kennedy decided to put man on the moon and basically made a 10-year commitment to do that and achieved it. We actually have less time than that. I just returned from the Marseille World Conservation Congress in Marseille, where the IUCN, the International Union of Conservation of Nature, actually adopted a proposal led by indigenous peoples of the Amazon basin by the organization COICA, representing the indigenous nations, over 400 indigenous nations that are in all of the 9 Amazon countries. And the motion called for the permanent protection of 80% of the Amazon basin by 2025 in particular, to avoid a tipping point of ecological collapse. And the motion passed unanimously. There were definitely countries that abstained, but there was no countries that voted against it. This is good news, hopeful that the world is starting to see what my colleague Anne described, a vision of the Amazon as a vital entity in the Earth system. And you saw the flying rivers. So I would say that part of the Living Amazon vision is inspired by the Buen Vivir vision, the vision that comes from the indigenous cosmology that sees Pachamama as the great Mother Earth, and that Buen Vivir is this idea of harmony among communities, with people and nature, and among the biome as a whole. The idea of mutually beneficial Earth-human relationship, that as we help to conditions of life to flourish, we in turn improve the conditions and well-being of humans. And so this work is happening across the Amazon basin. I'm particularly excited about the work of the Sacred Headwaters Initiative that's brought together this vision of permanent protection of the headwaters of the Amazon. To get to the Amazon, Living Amazon vision, what we identified in our chapter is some key elements. One, you heard about many of them. Ultimately, we're talking about transforming our economic system, economic model, as well as our governance system and governance model. This will require, a lot more collaboration and cooperation among the countries of the Amazon basin, but also a pact, a global commitment to the permanent protection of the Amazon, where global countries that are not in the Amazon also make commitments to support the economic transition, the ecological transition, and the support, the financial support and signals that are needed to transform the economic system from an extractive, exploitative economy that's life blind to one that is life seeing, life centric, and puts at its core the health and well-being of communities, forests, ecosystems, rivers, and that economic system will require commitments, financial commitments. We have looked a lot at sustainable development goals as well in this chapter of the Living Amazon. And one concern that we've had is that we have to address the unbridled economic growth model of the global economic system. And we really have to look at a degrowth in the total materials throughput of the global economy. Right now, we're using about 80 billion tons a year in materials in all of the world. A lot of that is coming from the world's tropical forests. if we look at the growth rates that are predicted on average, even green growth, we will be looking at 95 to 130 billion tons per year in materials throughput, which is way beyond the planetary boundaries that we want to stay within. And so we do have to look at degrowth in the throughput. And also we have to look at the fact that countries in the Amazon are currently, all of them are exceeding in terms of their, in terms of debt. The external debt of these countries is now exceeding, in many cases, between 60 and 100% of the GDP is how much these countries are indebted. In other words, the Amazon rainforest is being mortgaged to the financial system in order for economic activities that then destroy the forest in order to service the external debt. So we're looking at solution pathways that have to include financial debt relief, for example, for Amazonian countries to release the mortgage on the pristine areas of the Amazon in order to keep this economic system going. We need to basically bring the economic system in alignment with the forest and with the well-being of the people. And on that note, I would say that one of the key tenets of the Living Amazon vision is supporting local communities, including indigenous peoples. We know that indigenous peoples' stewardship is key to protecting biodiversity. In fact, nearly half of all pristine areas of the Amazon are on indigenous lands. And and what we need to do is legal recognition and protection of indigenous lands, and that indigenous territories receive the same sort of support to maintain their governance practices. So I will say also that in order for the Living Amazon vision to have a fighting chance, we need also recognition that there is an emergency, that the tipping point is near, that the planet's climate has a climate emergency, and there are many tipping points on the planet, of which the Amazon is one tipping point. That tipping point requires actions commensurate with the scale of the problem. And one of those problems is that governments must recognize the state of emergency that the planet is in, and to recognize that there has to be a seizing of existing extractive activities that put more forests at risk. So activities around extractive industries, road building, mining, cattle ranching, dam construction, large-scale dams, which are often promoted as clean energy, but they're not. We need to see a relocalization of economic activities away from industrial scale extraction to economies that work on restoration, regeneration, localization, food sovereignty, food security, addressing basically the basic needs and well-being of people. And so we do have to really shift our worldviews. You know, we heard earlier and described one of the how the Amazon has been viewed over historically since the time of the conquest, as seen as an empty space or a treasure trove for El Dorado, the legend of gold, and also a place where slavery was common practice and seen as ethically justified. In fact, there were paper declarations that allowed for, okay, I'm going to wrap up just to say that we do have to redefine progress. We have to redefine well-being. Instead of the GDP being our mantra, our economic system should be reorganized around well-being, the way that countries like Costa Rica and New Zealand and Bhutan and many others in Canada are starting to do. We can learn from those shifts in perspective, and to really treat the Amazon not as this empty space for an empty treasure house of resources, but as a vital heart, as a vital organ of the Earth system, and that ultimately our future survival on this planet is in part determined by the fate of the Amazon. And so through a participatory, visionary moonshot goal, the Living Amazon vision can be achieved, but it will take all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Atossa, for highlighting the interconnections of the system and the importance of collective, like a joint governance. I would like to open the floor for questions now. The first one is from, 1 second, Vitor Dutra. So Lilian, how the SPA is contributing for the subnational policies regarding the SDGs? He mentions as an example the Amazon Now State Plan of Plano Estadual Amazônia Agora in Portuguese, from the state of Pará, that directly mentions several SDGs, but we understand the importance of having science working together with decision makers. So if you could say what are the plans of the SPA for subnational policies, that would be great.
Well, this is first stage to provide these assessments, and I think that the idea is that different scientists, and also involving more scientists and practitioners and stakeholders, to provide support at the subnational level, no? And engaging with that kind of policy will be key to ensure the reduction of conflicts between different SDGs by localizing and respecting local visions. So I think that is something that will occur, but at this stage, the goal is to develop this assessment.
Thank you, Lilian. We have a question for Atossa. What does the recent IUCN Indigenous Agreement mean for achieving sustainable development in the Amazon? And what is needed to ensure it's truly implemented?
Well, as you know, there's been a lot of debate in the Biodiversity Convention around the next framework, the next aspiration to prevent the mass extinction. And the aspiration that's been debated for a long time, for the last 5 years, has been about 30%. We need to protect 30% of the Earth's natural areas. There's been additional studies that scientifically support the idea of 50%. We actually need to protect 50% of the, and based on studies that look at all of the different ecoregions on the planet. The statement at IUCN, the motion that passed, was a statement to say we need to actually put the 50%, neither the 30% nor the 50% are sufficient for maintaining the hydrological system of the Amazon. We actually have to commit, and many countries already have more than 80% of their forests, but really we need to ensure we guarantee that 80% is the target for the Amazon. It's the correct target. The motion carried, it basically said that there is appetite, that there is ambition by the nations for such a target. They understand the hydrological system is key for the planet. What it now needs is the actual motion proposes that each country of the Amazon creates their own plans for how they will maintain and restore 80% of the forest, and that there'll be dialogue, that there'll be more conversations through the Amazon Cooperation Treaty, which is a place where countries come together, but also at the level of the Biodiversity Convention and other frameworks where cooperation, international cooperation can come and commit to this target. I think people can also sign, as cities, as scientists, as institutions, NGOs can go to Amazonia 80 by 25 and sign the declaration, express their support for this ambition.
Thank you, Atossa. Do you mind sharing this on the chat so people can sign if they're interested? Thank you. Now I have a question for Dr. Poveda. Germán, do you think the damage to the hydrological system is irreversible, or do you think the damage can be mitigated?
Well, in some parts, it's very difficult to reverse so far, but we are still in time to avoid the collapse of the rainforest becoming a savanna. The problem is, if I may to say, is very profound, because deforestation and environmental degradation happen because there are economic incentives to do so. Economics understood as a science and as a development model. economics is not honest with the environment. The economic system makes a serious mistake, as Atossa was saying, when everything is based on GDP, for instance, or when the economy makes a serious mistake by valuing a forest by the price of its timber, or by the economic returns from expanding the agricultural frontier, from inefficient, extensive cattle ranching, and even mining. The true value of ecosystems must be recognized with a determined policy of payment or compensation to communities for the conservation of ecosystem services in their territories. Of course, this requires valuation and payment or compensation correlative with the importance of conserving the ecosystem. This economic valuation should be higher than the opportunity cost of any other extractive or land renting activity, even more so when we face the enormous power of drug trafficking money as in the Colombian Amazon. So the problem is very profound and it's very difficult to solve because of that. And that's the reason why the bioeconomy is the only way to solve the tension and sometimes the contradiction between economic development and sustainable development, because it requires a proactive preservation of the natural ecosystems. We're preserving our forests not only for the beauty of them, but to go for the non-timber products from the natural forests. You can think of the tremendous amount of foods, medicines, new materials, new cosmetics, new molecules, dyes, flavors, resins, chemical compounds, products from bioengineering, products from biomimetic, new patents, new inventions, a lot of skill jobs and a change of high value added products to stop this model of development that we have, that has been the rule in the Amazonian countries to export natural products without added value. So the bioeconomy is going to be the only way to overcome this tension, this always tension between economic development and sustainable development.
Thank you, Germán. We have a question for Anne. Anne, how was the collaborative process to develop this Living Amazon vision?
Well, it was very interesting to coordinate this process in the last year. First of all, we have more than 200 scientists in the SPA acting in a very different, how can I say, areas of knowledge, and it was a process to capture their main ideas, or what they think about what would be the principles and values that would guide the Living Amazon, and also like capture the experience and the views of indigenous peoples. So it was a long process that it took us to where we are now. We have all these principles and values that are sedimented in the SPA, and also the Living Amazon concept as what we want for the Amazon, based on these three major, how can I say, tripods, or the three major components, or what we call pillars, in which the circular bioeconomy is one of them. The governance is the other, governance and empowerment of Amazonian people, and also the conservation, restoration, and remediation of ecosystems. So I think building this framework was a very interesting thing for me, which is I'm a fire scientist. So coordinating this together with Lilian and the other members of this chapter of the vision was very interesting in learning, steep learning curve process.
Thank you, Annie. We have one final question for Lilian. Lilian, so you mentioned how the COVID-19 affected many of the SDGs in the region. So based on your analysis, what are the chances for the Amazon countries to achieve the SDGs now after COVID by 2030?
Okay, well, we weren't doing well before COVID, and now we're doing worse. So the only chance that there is to change the model and take advantage of these tremendous opportunities that Germán has mentioned of our biodiversity and cultural wealth, and also value the importance, a recognition, create a global movement to support conservation of the Amazon, including the well-being of the Amazonian people. But it's the protection of the Amazon is a global responsibility that not only the Amazonian countries have to take. We have a responsibility, but we also need to be supported, and that includes the urban people, but also the indigenous people that are, as Atossa mentioned, protecting as much area as protected areas in terms of pristine habitat. No, that is important for everybody in the world. So I think we have to change the model. Because it wasn't working, and now it's working even less. Yeah.
Thank you, Lilian, and thank you for all of our speakers today. Thank you for all the participants. And more than ever, our decisions about how to ensure the conservation and sustainable development of the Amazon must be informed by quality science. And COVID-19 really showed us how we need to listen to what science says, but also traditional knowledge and other types of the diverse knowledge systems that we have. And the science panel is one of the mechanisms to achieve this, to listen to multi-stakeholder and network coalitions. So like Atossa was saying, it's urgent that we take action now, that we stop deforestation, degradation. And thank you all for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.